Welcome back to the Fan Creations Prop Shop, guys. My name's Chris, and in this video we are going to be building a diorama based around the Mandalorian, specifically to hold up a PlayStation 5 controller. This build's actually a friend of mine's idea, in essence. It's for a friend of mine called Neil and his son Ty, and basically the idea was to just build Grogu, Baby Yoda, the child, whichever you prefer, holding this PlayStation controller like this. The whole build would have been about yay big. I don't think that's within my remit just yet. So I had a different idea. This is what it was. So like any other project that contains 3D printed parts, I tend to use Thingiverse and my Mini Factory. I also do model a few things on Tinkercad, which I think I've covered lightly in another video before. There's better videos than I could ever put out on Tinkercad, but have a look at it. But for this project, everything I use in Thingiverse and my Mini Factory, I will link below so you can do it for yourself. So the print has finished and it looks like it's done quite nicely. So we're going to get that off the bed, clean that up, cure it, remove the supports, or remove the supports then cure it, and then crack on from there. Just incidentally, if you ignore the horrible noise it's making, this is me makeshift curing station, so it's just Tupperware full of isopropyl alcohol with a cheap magnetic stirrer in there, as you can see. And then what I use to cure is just like a little nail thing, like UV nail light, and that's basically it. And it's a hell of a lot cheaper than 139 quid. Okay, so the Greebelies have finished. I don't know if you can really see that because it's still covered in resin, but that looks like it's been successful. Get these Greebelies cleaned up and we'll show you that in a minute. So this is the Greebelies that's printed, and obviously the benefit of using a resin printer is that you get insane amounts of detail, as you can see from this one. I hit that one with a bit of primer. These are all from, everything down here is from Thingiverse, and I'll link all of this in the description. I modelled that and that on Tinkercad. That's Orabesh, and that says PlayStation 5. It's going to be like a little plaque that goes on the back there. And this little fella, like you said before, is on my Mini Factory, and he has come out absolutely perfectly. The lighting here sucks so hard, so let's see if I can get him a bit better. But that, I'm very much impressed with the print quality of that, so this is going to be a fun build. So let's go and do it then. At the minute what I'm printing is the kind of floating bracket for the PS5 controller. I'm going to weather that, paint it up and weather it and make it look all Star Warsy and stuff. So that's nearly done. What are we at? 71%. Not long now. Right, so for your base, we're just going to use MDF. That's 10mm MDF, and that's exactly the size of a piece of A4 paper, and so is that bit. So the plan is put them together on a 90-degree angle. You then get your sides, which are slightly smaller, but the height's the same. That's 6mm MDF. And you're going to have them essentially like that. So that's what I want to do now. Right, so I've knocked up the frame, and the 90-degree frame, and that's held in place with screws. One thing I will say, if you're going to screw into MDF with relatively decent sized screws, drill it first, because it will split. It's like really prone to splitting. Anyway, once that's done, I've got the sides up, which we're going to look like so, right, on both sides. And I figured it's a bit too boxy. I'm not a massive fan of just boxes like that. It looks a bit crap when you're doing a diorama. So the best way to make anything look more Star Warsy is to stick a 45-degree angle on it. So what I've decided to do is cut out that kind of, this is obviously the bit that's going to be cut out. So if you imagine from the other side here, when that's attached, it'll be I'm hoping it'll actually be attached. It'll look like that sort of thing, right? And then I'm going to round off this bit a bit more organically not just a round corner, but like I might even just put a 45-degree angle on that, to be fair. We'll see what I feel like at the time. And what's going to happen is, that's your PlayStation 5 remote, which is printed on an FDM printer. Remote holder, bracket, whatever. And you're going to screw that there, and that's going to roughly where... Oh, hang on. I'm going to have to find out what the width of a PlayStation controller is to make sure it doesn't hit that side. Right, I'll overcome that hurdle and then we'll address this.
24 hours later.
Okay, so it's the next day. What I've done, as you can see, is I've just added some of that extruded polystyrene onto this base, and I've done that just with wood glue. I've used the wire brush to rough this up, bit of sandpaper to rough up the MDF, which, as I mentioned in the previous one, did split. But don't worry, that's very easy to fix. That's not an issue. So anyway, that's where we're sitting at the minute. That's dried. That's brilliant. I have overcome the other problem. I've literally just come back from visiting my mate, Neil, who this is for. And what we did was we took this panel, essentially. We took this PlayStation controller mount, which I now realise was upside down. It's this way up. Let's have a look. And let's have a look. So if I put that there, it's kind of centralised-ish, but it's right on the edge of that. So I've been out, and it took us ages to do because it's a pain in the arse to do with a handsaw. I've done that side, and you can see where I've marked where the bracket's going to live. So once the bracket is lined up like that, that is how that side panel is going to look. That's directly from above. Obviously it'll be straight, and this is going to have more of this foam. It's going to be textured and all that. So it's actually going to look smaller than this once there's foam and everything on it. But we'll, like I say, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but that's where we're at the moment. So I'm going to go outside and I'm going to make these cuts with a handsaw because I don't have a scroll saw. This is going to suck, but it's one way of getting it done. So that bit's been cut out now, and that is how it's looking so far. It's just rested up, it's not glued in place or anything because I need to consider how I'm going to add this foam. Am I going to do it like this? Yeah, I probably will actually. And then once I've added the foam, that's when I'll shape this bit. But so far, I've got to be honest, I'm quite happy with the foundations, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's move on from here, get some foam added. So I've permanently attached the sides here now with by drilling them in and screwing them in, and I've taken some of this foam, the high impact polystyrene, and cut that shape so that fits nicely on the inside, so we can start to glue that down, and then obviously that's going to hold the texture of everything. That little recess there and those two holes in there are for the bracket here, which is going to basically sit. Hang on, how have I done that? Really hard to do this with one hand. So in essence, it's going to be like that. So we're going to start texturing that. We'll glue this down to here first on both sides. And once that's done, texture this, turn that into things, and then we'll start working on the 3D printed pieces and building it up. So I'm rooting around in the side little bits here outside the back of the house for little bits and pieces of rocks to try and get some texture into this foam, and it's just not what I'm looking for. I can't find anything of any use.
Sometimes I guess there just aren't enough rocks.
So I'm here at Seaburn Beach in the northeast, and what I'm doing is I'm on this little beach here and I'm looking for a rock, and the rock I'm going to use is to kind of press a bit of texture into that foam, and that's going to make that look like stone. Let's see if we can find one with the right texture on it. But we'll keep looking, and when we find the right one, that's the one we'll use. And I basically found these. So different textures, different types of rocks there. We're going to press these into the foam and see what we'll come up with. Let's try and fit this in before the washing machine cuts us off. Oh, never mind. So the essential idea here, as you can, I don't know if you can see actually, is for this foam to pick up texture. This is just a sample piece, obviously. So out of these, I'll be honest with you, they are okay in small little pieces, but this one here generally gives a better, more what I'm looking for, kind of realistic texture. So that's the reason you put the foam on normally, is so it'll pick up the detail. So if you look at this kind of flat bit here, so you just take any section of your rock that you like, say that bit there, and just push it in, and all that's going to do is add a bit of texture. Now it might look a bit pumped now, to be fair, right, but when that's done, if you look at that in the right light, which this isn't, there we go, it's got that kind of rock-ish texture, or it will, trust us, that's going to look like rock when it's painted. So I'm going to do that to all of this, and then we'll paint it and, you know, show you that. God damn it!
2,000 years later.
Just a quick note here when you're adding texture to your foam. If you do find, okay, that you get little cracks in the foam like that, don't worry too much about that, because to be honest with you, if you look, what you're doing is you're making a wall. And it's the Star Wars universe is an old, weathered, used universe. So your walls are going to have cracks, they're going to have chips. I'm going to chip some blaster marks in here as well, actually, to come to think of it. So any little blemishes like that, don't worry so much. Also, if you happen to like bugger it up with a fingernail and that's a blatantly obvious fingernail mark, you can literally just go over that with your rock and it'll add texture and it'll just totally kill that. So little mistakes like that, don't worry. Imperfections are in nature, you're going to find them everywhere. So don't worry if it's not perfect, it's not meant to be. So the texturing has been finished now on the whole thing, on all different sides here. And what I started to do was I basically drew around this space door in order to recess this so it looks a bit more part of the wall. Problem being, because I'm a moron, as I'm pretty sure we've established at this point, I've glued the foam down to the MDF, so this is not easy to dig out. With this poxy little like surgical scalpel, I'll be here forever just doing this, and I really can't be arsed. So I'm just gonna wait until tomorrow because it's dark now, and I'm gonna do this with the Dremel and just cut it out with a grinding tool and then crack on from there. So good night for now, and we'll see you in the morning. It's the morning, about 4 days later, and I've hit a snag here, a really stupid snag on my behalf, and I'm such an idiot. So I basically decided to print some helmets, some 3D helmets, 3D printed helmets. There's this one, which I've got to be honest, I'm absolutely in love with this file. This isn't my file, I'll link all, if you're familiar with 3D print at all and you haven't seen these two models before, where the hell have you been? But if you want any of these STLs, I will be linking all of the stuff that I use from Thingiverse, all of these creators and that, in the description at the bottom. So anyway, the point is, I think I scaled that quite nicely with the helmets, and that one did fail in a kind of weird way, but what I have in store for this, it doesn't really matter, to be completely honest. Anyway, what does matter is this door. This door is no longer at the right scale, because if that is a stormtrooper, then that would have to be one shorter stormtrooper to have his body go there to walk through that door. He's okay with the helmet, but the door just doesn't fit. So I thought I'll not do the door, but obviously I dug some away because, as previously mentioned, moron. So what I think I'm gonna have to do here, been racking my brains, I'm gonna change the design completely. Well, not completely, but drastically. And I'm going to go for something along the lines of what was in the Mandalorian, and I'm going to have like a barbecue skewer acting like a steak, and I'm going to stake this helmet. I'm going to give it proper lenses and somewhat of an interior, and then I'm going to smash it up on the spike And then obviously he was still in his when he got his helmet removed, so that'll be kind of the scene. But how am I going to deal with this? I did mention before I was going to put some blaster marks in the walls, which I'm going to do, but I'm going to have to probably fill that a bit, or at least sand it smooth, before I then texture it again with the rogue. And yeah, so that's kind of where we're sitting at the minute. So I'm going to sit and have a bit of a think, because this is doing me noodling right now, and then we'll get started on what I come up with. It's one of the best things about working with this extruded polystyrene is it's really, really fun to work with, because it takes the texture really nicely. If you've got a sharp enough blade, it works well to cut into all sorts of mad little shapes and stuff. You can indent it with pencils to make cracks and stuff. It looks great, and then you can sand it. So if you just give it a bit of a kind of sand, it's going to mean I can take this back a bit, and then I can put some texture in that. On top of that with the rock again. You'll probably not see much of it now, but once it's painted and sealed and everything, it's going to look better than it did before I chipped away at it. So I'm going to keep doing that, try and blend that in a bit. So with the exception of these kind of slashes here, which I'm leaving in, I'm going to rough them up a bit, but you'll see where I'm going from in a minute. So given that these guys have been obviously met a bit, they're not here anymore. There's been some sort of battle here previously to when Grogu turns up and does his thing. So these are going to be blaster points, and I'm going to chip into the foam here, and then when it's painted up, obviously I'll weather them, and I'll either dry brush a bit of black powder or maybe use the airbrush. I haven't decided yet. But we'll basically try to make this look like a bit of a battle's gone on, and this here is going to go as battle damage. So as Bob Ross would say, not a mistake, just a happy accident. So I've worked that in, and I've put a few blaster marks, which obviously will look better when it's painted up and everything, and that is going to be quite a large explosion, or was at the time of things. That's the plan anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to seal this now, and the way I'm going to seal it is I'm going to mix some just cheapy PVA wood glue that you get, if I remember rightly, Poundland, but that's any cheap PVA wood glue will do the job. Search through a small amount of paint that you may have to find like dirt colours, desert dirt colours. I'm going to try and mix them up on here because I don't think I've got the right ones. And when I do, you mix the paint with the glue, paint it on this, and then I've had a really cool idea for the outside of this, which I'll explain in a minute. But let's get this sealed. Okay, so what I've ended up with is this kind of weird concoction here, and all that is a mixture of these cheapy little acrylic paints I found. You got yellow ochre. I brightened, excuse me, I diluted it, or brightened it I should say, with a bit of white, a little bit of water, and some of that cheapy PVA wood glue. So I just eyeballed the measurements, but that's the kind of consistency, and you've seen Star Wars, you know the kind of colour you're going for. That's not showing up great on camera, but in person, it's a lot paler. So we're going to paint that on, and hopefully it'll hide that stuff. If not, you can always paint over it. That's the beauty of paint. You can paint it because it's paint, and that's paint. So that seam's dried, and I've coated it with another coat of yellow. What I'm doing at the minute there is I'm kind of stippling on some of this darker paint here, just to give it that effect of like a more natural kind of colour. So that's where we're at the minute. I'm not going to film myself doing that because it's too awkward, but we'll see when that's finished. I can only apologise for the crappy lighting here, but that is kind of where we're sitting at with this stippled effect, which gives it more of a rock, sandy stone kind of appearance. So hopefully when the lighting's a bit better and there's more stuff on there, it'll look a bit more like something. But until then, let's move on to the next bit. So I've taped up the front like so, and what I'm doing is concentrating on the outside of the box now. So I've sanded that as best I can with a little palm sander, and I'm going to try and prime it. We're going to spray this silver, then we're going to weather this, and the outside of this is essentially going to look like a crate from the Star Wars universe. So I'm going to get that primed with a bit of filler primer, and then we'll move on from there. So that's got a thick layer of that filler primer on. It has ran in places like, oh, standing your own light, you moron, like that. I don't know if you can see that, but it doesn't really matter because you can always just lightly sand that. And then obviously it's going to be silver over the top of that, so you're not going to see it anyway. So wait for this to dry, touch up the bits that haven't been primed, prime them, and then the next coat for this is silver. So I've managed to spray the outside of this silver metallic spray paint. You will notice in certain areas that, there we are, that's better. It's reacted a little bit. Not a major drama, to be honest, because it all adds to weathering. But that does suck. But I suspect the reason that happened is because the Rust-Oleum paint I was using for the first time ever, I just had the most ridiculous problem where it wouldn't spray, it would get clogged. So I'd soak it in hot water, clean the nozzle, and then you'd spray for 2 or 3, and then it would clog again. So this little box, that's taken us about 45 minutes to do this. So I'm going to bed now, but we'll sort it out later on. So I'm trying to spray these little edge pieces, which I seem to have done, but I've oversprayed a little bit at the back, right? So I've got some runs, which I've had to wipe away. Problem is, this, which is Rust-Oleum, I'm really genuinely quite shocked at this, is a full can practically. And what you have to do, excuse me, is run this under hot water. Now, you would think this would work, and it does, for 4 seconds, and then you're going to come back in and do this again, for the entire goddamn tin. Now, this has never happened to me with Rust-Oleum before, so I'm a bit pissed off now. But it's alright, we'll manage. Nice and hot now, so, once you, god damn it, once you heat it again, take off the lid, and give that a cleanse, and that should work for about 2 more, so maybe 3 seconds if you're lucky. Damn it. That's it, it's dead again. That looks totally shit right now. But it doesn't really matter. What we're going to be doing, you see, is we're going to be putting little bits and pieces of liquid latex on this side and on that side, and that when it's dry. So then when you paint that with its, like the kind of grey, the space grey that they do, space grey, god damn it. Star Wars grey, like a primer grey. And then you rub that over all the little chips and that'll come out. And then it should look mint, he says optimistically. However, I've had me fill of this paint, so I'm going to get ready and go to work, and I'll just do this when I come home. So, I'll see you then. So, that silver paint's actually dry now, and to be fair, it doesn't look that bad. In terms of all we're trying to do is really give it a silver coat so we can make the chipping effect. There's a little bit of a run there, but once that's painted away, you'll not notice that. So, yeah. So, the next plan on the sides, mainly the edges, high chipping points, we're going to be putting some liquid latex. And what happens is obviously, well, you'll see. So we're going to paint some liquid latex on the bits and pieces, and then paint this. So let's do that. Now, if you don't have access to any liquid latex, there are a few alternatives. You could actually even use toothpaste on this. But depending on what you're using, would obviously depend on the surface you're putting it on. So just be a little bit careful when you try this step. So this is literally just laid down, it's still wet. But if you kind of pay attention to that, so that's all you're doing. You're going to just lay some liquid latex on. If it doesn't settle and it separates like that, again, that's absolutely fine, because you're going to paint over that. This will dry. It'll air dry, and it's some sticky shit. Liquid latex, it even says in the thing, create toned skin. It's like, you know when you were a kid and you used to put PVA glue on your hands and then peel it off? Oh, I remember. It's like that, but way more satisfying. So it will dry. It will dry on here, and we're going to add a bit more to the sides. Hopefully this will dry quick, because obviously I don't want it to run, because then it just looks rubbish. But anyway, do that. We'll do it on all sides. I'm not going to really bother with the bottom. Oh no, I might as well. I'll do it on the bottom as well. Then when we spray it, you'll see. You'll see. Okay, so the latex is dried now overnight. We've put that on. It looks pretty gross right now. It looks like someone spooged all over the model, which is obviously not what you do until it's finished. Let's go and get some primer on this thing. You're not going to believe this, because I absolutely don't. But me primer, which is a different brand, and obviously it's not a paint, it's a primer, is doing the same thing as what the silver was doing. It won't spray properly. And I know I'm an unlucky kind of guy, but that's horrific. I mean, I've managed to get some of it done. So, and you can see the few lumps there where the latex is showing through. When you rub that away, that's going to be silver. It's going to look really good, hopefully. I still need to do the back, because again, moron. But obviously I'm going to have to buy more of this, because, well, shit. Having said that, I suspect it could be, because I'm keeping it in the shed, which is outside in the world, and I live in the northeast of England, and it's freezing cold all the time. So it could just be that. So I'm going to move the paints indoors, but it's been a stressful day today. So again, I'm going to get ready, go to work, and then I'll see how much of this I can get done in the meantime. So we'll see you then. Right, so the primer and everything's dried. I managed to get some of it on. So this is the back. So that's what it looks like before you rub this away. I'm not going to do this now, because I'll be honest with you, rubbing this away from MDF has proved to be a little bit more difficult than I thought it was going to. I've ended up having to use the rubber, or for our American cousins, the eraser side of a pencil to try and just, you know, rub that away. But the residue it leaves is a bitch to get off. So rather than just pick it off, I was using white tack, blue tack, green tack, orange tack, doesn't really matter. Tacky shit that you use to put posters on walls. Use some of that and stick it off, and the effect ends up looking like that. So it shows the silver metal from underneath, but that basically. So we're going to do that for the rest, and it's going to take some time. And the other thing we've had is some of the primer and paint got through and melted that foam, which I'll be honest, I'm glad it melted it rather than covering it in paint, because otherwise it could be a pain in the arse, because I haven't got a lot of this left. So I'm going to have to overcome that, but that's where we're at the moment. Just turning these bits into these bits, and then that's it. Then we'll get on to doing the interior, but that's where we're at the minute. So I've messed around with a few different techniques, and I've found a good way of taking the latex off and leaving a nice clean like scar, and it's to use a rubber or an eraser just to give it a bit of a rub. It works better if it is in the shape of a kitten, but you've got to work with what you've got. So if you can't get a kitten rubber, a normal one will do, but preferably a kitten. Rub it with your kitten. That sounded awful. Rub it with your rubber. Yeah. Do this, and then you put masking tape on it to take up all the like debris of this horrible liquid latex and primer mix. I can't really video it and do it at the same time, but trust us, it works. Just make sure you've got a kitten. So I decided to try and fill some of these gaps with a bit of that knife and putty, like a spot putty from Halfords. Good stuff. It's worth £3. And I'll be honest with you, I think I'm probably going to have to do the entire edge here, all the way around the outside. I still need to decide what I'm doing with this corner as well. And I think since I've just put spot putty on it, I've just made that decision. I'm going to cut it off. Right, so let's do that. So if you can just ignore the cutter at the minute, what's happening is I've put that spot putty, sorry for the weird angle as well, but it's upside down. I've put the spot putty all around the edges there, and I'm going to sand that smooth when it's cured and decide what to do with it later on. But for now, I'm going to leave that to cure, and we'll pick this up later on. It's later on. This has cured, and I'm actually really happy with how this has turned out. I haven't sanded it yet because it's late and I don't want to wake people up, so I'm going to make the cuts here with my handy dandy hacksaw. It is ridiculously hard to try and film this and do that at the same time, so I'm going to prop myself up there, facing that way. If you can see it, great. If you can't, then ignore what I've just said, because I'll most likely edit it out. I'm just going to apologise for the constant jump cuts here, because this is the only way I can really do this. But all I've done here is I've marked it off that way. I've measured the whole thing, found the centre, measured the same distance from side to side here. From that's the corner I've decided, that's that right angle. And then that'll come off, and then I'll basically do this on this edge, and I haven't decided what I'm actually going to do with this edge yet, if I'm going to try and just blend it into the model, or if I'm going to make it look like the rest of the box. Oh, I don't think I showed you the rest of the box, did I? It's not finished yet. I'm going to put Greebelies and stuff on it, but there's just going to be lazy Susan here. Right, so as it stands at the minute, the outside looks like that, and that's all metallic showing through, so that's your external view of the box. But from inside, it's a little scene that I haven't finished yet. One thing I will say, I don't like this idea, because screws don't like that, they don't really exist in the Star Wars universe. So what I found is, in my kit somewhere, these little doohickeys called nail head claws. So basically all you do is you put that over the top of these and hammer it in, and then it'll essentially look like rivets. Rivets are kind of universal or galaxial words. Anyway, let's do things. This is not working. Well, that sucked. I don't know. Hold on. Where's my little one? High-tech setting over here. Please don't be shit, please don't be shit, please don't be shit, please don't be shit. Well, it's not shit, but it needs tidying up. We can do that. We have the technology. Please don't suck. Yes, right. That one's better than that one, but we can sort that out. Good, happy days, things, wonderful awesomeness. Right. I'm gonna go and have a beer. So welcome to today's drama. I've got up in the morning to come and do some work on this, and yes, this spot putty is a fantastic thing, and the problem we've got is where it's contacted the foam around here. In some areas, as you can see, it's dented, or it's indented. The reason it's done that, like so, and this is just horrendous. The reason it's done that is, I suspect that the solvents in this Holt's knife and shit has melted the foam underneath in places. Not so bad here, obviously, because I'd sealed that. However, I think what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to go over it again in order to give it enough purchase, it for want of a better phrase, in order to sand it, because look, these offcuts where the foam is, that's really soft. If I start to sand that, that's not really going to do anything, is it? So I need to do a little bit more thinking here about how I'm going to address this. But this is the today's drama. I'm sure there'll be another one tomorrow, but for today, we're going to figure this one out. I think what I'm going to do before I do anything else is I'm going to straighten these edges with my little palm sander. So we're working with straight edges at least. And then I can maybe redo this. And then when that's dried, I can make some work on... Make some work? I can do some work on painting the 3D printed parts. And then when things will occur and it'll become a thing that's not shit, hopefully. So, let's do that. So I've sanded this back. It's sealed at the minute with a bit of Mod Podge, and the reason I've done that is obviously I want to seal these bits of foam before I put any of this spot putty on. So unfortunately, that's a bit's wasted there, but not to worry, it's cheap enough. So I did sand around the edges, and it's kind of given us an idea of what I want to do here. I think I'm going to still go for a separation between the box and the scene. So you can see like a line here. So I'm going to try and still paint this part silver, as if it's the unpainted inside of the metal box. And then this I'm going to blend back in with the scenery. I just didn't like the gap I was getting around the outside. It looked a bit crap. Plus MDF doesn't take paint very well on... It's okay on sanded and primed surfaces like this, but when you get to the edges, as you can see from the back here, this like cut edge, it's okay for making like metal grain, but it's not perfect, and it's not the best surface to be painting on. It's just easy to work with, to be honest, for bases and such, which is why I chose it. I think in retrospect I'll do something different next time, but for now I'm going to leave that Mod Podge to set, cure, dry, whatever it does. I'll probably give it a second coat actually before, just to make absolutely sure. Then I'm going to put spot putty on here, and then we'll figure out painting that later on. For now though, I'm going to put this to one side to dry. I'm going to work on the 3D printed pieces. So that's where we are so far with the airbrushing. I'll just give that a quick coat there. And what I'm going to do now is I've loaded it up with black, and I'm going to do these kind of scorch marks on the blaster points that I've put in the model here. Again, I'm not going to be able to video this while I do it, but it's essentially... Imagine this is the model. It's just start with the central point and then work your way out from there. Don't obviously go too uniform with it, but that's essentially what you're doing. And that's going to create carbon scoring for your blaster points. So, I'm going to do that, and then I'll show you when it's finished. So I've done them blaster points now. Hopefully, once the rest of the scene is set, then they'll blend right in. But the idea is that there's been some sort of battle here. These fellas didn't come out too well, and I'm going to have a pike with a helmet on it, dead dude in the corner, Greebelies, child, PlayStation controller. That's the general gist, but I'm quite happy with that so far. It doesn't look much, I keep saying this, but when it's finished, it'll all make sense. So when I'm waiting for everything to dry, I'm going to work on this. So mainly this bit here. This is just a little plaque that I've made and 3D printed on the resin printer, and it says PlayStation 5 in Arabesh. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of the liquid latex and do the same weathering technique on this and this universal Greebly that I've done here. So again, you're going to add latex, you're going to airbrush your paint on, not black. I'm going to use like a whole red and basically weather this and this. I haven't decided what I'm doing with these Greebelies yet. It's going to be easier to figure that out once they're up against the model and I can lay it out and see what it's going to look like. But I know I want these weathered, so I'm going to try and prop the camera up and show you how I do this. So bear with us 2 seconds. So the Greebelies are painted. I'll get out my own light there if I can. I didn't go with the whole red on this and these little bits here. I ended up going with metallic bronze, and I really like the way that looks. I've gone over the Orabesh here with a black paint pen. Sorry, these ones here. I've got a range of colours in these, which is what I've used to paint up these Greebelies. What I ended up doing as well, just as a tester, is I painted up, using the paint pens, the Stormtrooper side of this. And to be honest with you, I'm actually relatively happy with how the little details have come out, especially this bit. Pretty pleased with that. There's a few bits and pieces where it could do better. And obviously the white, the white I've sprayed on is an off, it's a white grey. And I'll be honest, once it's fully cured, I don't like that for the Stormtroopers. That doesn't matter. Oh, that doesn't matter because it's actually smooth. It just looks awful. It's been sanded. It just needs another coat of paint, and that's, you're laughing there. But the thing is with this, it's not white, and it needs to be. Even though I'm going to weather it back, it still needs to be white. So I've went over this with a paint pen to make it white, and it has unfortunately left it a bit patchy. That's just from where the supports are, but you're not going to see that because it's going to be right against the back here. So it's not perfect, but again, I think the weathering can hide a lot of sins here, and that's kind of the idea. But generally, I'm pretty happy. I love that print. Generally happy with those paint pens, so they're pretty mint. I've never used them before, and we've got his coat done so far, and I've got no green, so I think, to be honest with you, I'm going to have to order some more airbrush paints. Maybe some actual paints and just do that by hand, but that's where we're at the moment. And it's late again, and my head hurts, so I'm gonna go and have a beer and lie down, and maybe several other beers. But that's it for now. So good night, and we'll pick this up probably in about 2 days. So I've finished the weathering job on this guy, and I'm actually really happy with this. The only thing I need to do really is for the blaster holes here, I need to kind of put some carbon scoring on that, and obviously on some of the cracks at the front. The way I'm going to do that, because it's too small to do with my epoxy cheap ass airbrush, is I'm going to use pastels. So what you do is you bear with us 2 seconds. You take your pastels, and in this case obviously we're just going to go straight for the black one, and you take a blade, you scratch a bit off of the pastel like this, and then you've got some black pastel powder, and what you do is you're going to use a brush to dry brush that on. I will try and film this, but I don't think I'll be able to. So again, if it's not in the next shot, it's been edited out because of the reasons. I really am sorry for this. This is just so hard to do. So essentially all you're going to do is you take a very small dry brush and you dip that in your pastel powder, okay? And what I'm trying to do here is essentially, I'm just trying to focus here, is you're trying to like just create that kind of carbon scoring and powder burn away from the blast point sort of thing. So when you're done, it looks something like, it's subtle, but it's there. So I mean, like a burn mark, like a blaster point. So I'm going to do that with the cracks on the face and the back. The back's not so bothered because I don't know why I did that, actually. You're not really going to see that, but you know, it's always nice to learn a new thing. So that's how you do stuff like that. So I don't know if you can really see that with this camera, but that's the effect we're going for. It's kind of a subtle carbon scoring. The weathering takes a bit of it away, but that's kind of... The point is his face has been blown off and he's been sitting there a while in his little dome there. Yeah, I'm really happy with that, like, that looks pretty mint. So, we've also got a little bit of paint on this dude here, and he's pretty much done except for his hands and his face and his eyes and such. So we need to do that. The Greebelies are done. I need to get some white for this dude because I can't be asked to have to paint this whole thing with a pen. So I'm going to nip out and get some paints tomorrow and we'll pick it up there. But for now, this little deadness is looking pretty decent. So, happy days. So it's the next day, and what I've done is I wasn't able to get the paints I wanted, but I've managed to find some just ordinary acrylics, just cheapy white acrylics. That's a titanium white, and I've given this Stormtrooper helmet a couple of light coats there. The finish isn't perfect on this in terms of like smoothness, but again, it doesn't really matter because given the state of this dude here in the corner, he's been there for a while, so the weathering is okay as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to use some of this foam to try and create like somewhat of an interior to the helmet, just so you can kind of, if you catch it from the right angle, it'll really look like an actual helmet in there. But anyway, that's drying. The finer details I can do later. What I'm doing now is I'm going to paint the wee man here, and I've done the coat and I've done his collar and stuff. I've put it overspray on the face, but that's fine. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint that with acrylics as well. I'm going to thin them out with some white and try some different shades, but I've got plenty here to work with to try and match as closely as I can to the actual colour of, well, Grogu, the child, Baby Yoda, again, whatever you want to call him, it's up to you. So I'm going to go through these, get the colour right, slap some paint on him, and hopefully he'll be done shortly. So I'll see you when that's done. So, I think I've got my paint right. I've used an emerald green and an absolute ton of this titanium white to lighten it right up. I've checked it against the reference photos, and so far, I'm pretty happy with how it's going on. That might look a bit weird for now. It's because what I'm doing is, as I mentioned in one of my other videos, I'm not a big fan of having brush strokes on certain projects. It doesn't matter so much with this, because like I say, I'm going to weather the shit out of that. When it comes to this little dude though, I think dabbling it with a little bit of sponge again is going to give it that kind of skin texture. If I give it 2 or 3 layers of colour, and I'm going to give it a wash as well, so obviously I can get all the little wrinkles in his dome and his cute little face and his fingernails and all that sort of stuff. We're going to try and get as much detail out to kind of pop on this, so he stands right out. But as it stands, that's where he is at the minute. So I'm going to get this painted and shut the window so you don't have to listen to morons all the time. So I've got some paint on him, and I'm really happy with that colour. It might look a bit weird and minty at the minute, but I'm going to put a wash over it. The eyes are a bit creepy at the minute, like, aren't they? But never mind. So I started to put some black on that and it wasn't working because the paint's not fully dry. So I'm going to give that a little bit to dry. But while they're drying, I am going to work on this edge. I haven't decided still what I think. Looking at this, I think the best thing to do is just straighten it as best I can. Turn the outside edge back into the box, but just silver, so it's like the box has been cut open to reveal what's inside, and then what's inside is the seam. So foam edges are going to get blended into this. These edges are going to get turned into silver, and that's that. Right. Greebelies, I still need to find me Dremel in order to put Greebelies, but I'm going to put some Greebelies on the outside of this, and that's going to become the next thing we're working on until such times as this dries. But at the minute, that's where we are, and I've got to be honest, I'm pretty happy with that. So let's get this bit done. So this is how we're looking at the minute. The paint around the edge here actually still needs to dry, but what I've done is when I had it on the brush, as you can see, is I've gone over this with a little bit of like a dry brushing just to highlight some of the, so you've got the highlights and the low lights and the mid lights there, so that gives you much more of a a stony, rocky texture. I've redone these because I wasn't really happy with this one, given that it was meant to be a bigger explosion. I think I'm relatively pleased with how that's turned out now, these blast points. So now what I'm going to do is on the inside is I'm going to work on the Greebelies. So I've got some Greebelies here printed and painted up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to strategically attach these to the inside of here and using hot glue, because it's the only glue I think I've got that's not going to melt this bloody foam. So I'll get that done and then I'll show you what that looks like when it's finished. So I had to do a lot of this off camera because, like I say, it's just an absolute nightmare to film and actually do this. So with the exception of this little fella here, everything here is now permanently attached. So you've got your Greebelies there, you've got the PlayStation 5 and the random Greebly there, all weathered, and you got TK Deadness in the corner being all dead. And that's where we're sitting. So literally all I need to do is wait for this to dry enough where I can paint the eyes. I'm going to do a wash on the top to pick up more details, see if I can find out a way of doing tiny little hair, and then attach him. I've drilled a hole in the base here for this, and that's just a kebab skewer which I've cut to size, and that sits upright like so. And what that's going to hold is, if I can find where I've put him, when this is finished being painted properly and weathered and everything, this dude here is going to have his head on a spike, essentially. So that's where we're at so far. That's how much we've got left to do. So let's do that. I think we're nearing the home stretch now. So this is the paint job on the little man there, and I'm quite happy with that, to be fair. All I need to really do is I need to give him a wash to pick up some of the details and again sort the hair out. This Stormtrooper helmet's not looking too awful. I need to drill a hole in the top in order to get the kind of spike to go all the way through the helmet and weather this and do other things with this. Finish him, glue him down. So that. And then honestly after that it's just a case of tarting this edge up here silver so it's a part of the box. I still need to cover these screws over with these to make that look a bit less budged together. But we're getting there and it's getting really close to being finished now, so that's kind of what you're looking at now. So I'm going to go and take a break and we'll pick this up tomorrow. Home stretch now, so minor details is left to be done. These guys need weathered and painted. This needs painted and weathered. That needs put inside there. That needs weathered, that needs drilled, do that. However, this little badger is one of the Greebelies for the outside. And the way we've done this is actually a project I had going a while ago. This is a Grapple Gun from Batman vs Superman. It's actually a Ruby's one, so when it comes it's all orange. I started trying to paint this up and honestly, I ballsed up the wood finish on the handle. I always meant to get back to this, but never did. Plus the movie sucks, so who cares? So I've cut it to pieces, and what that's left us with is a handle I'm pretty sure I can do something with later on at some point. So that goes to one side on the shelf of this. And then this, we're going to turn in, is what's left basically. We're going to turn them into Greebelies. So I'm going to repaint these. Obviously, I'm going to tidy the edges up with a bit of sand and what have you. Repaint this whole thing, and then that can act as like a Greebly for the box, so it looks more Star Warsy, for want of a better phrase. So I'm going to work on these guys first, then I'm going to work on that. If I can film it, I will. If not, I do apologise, but it's just going to have to be a case of this is what I'm doing, and then look at it's done. So let's do that. So I've taken the airbrush and I've taken some of these Model A paints. What I'm using is, if I can find the right one, did I put it back? I did put it back. Just ordinary Model A steel. That's the airbrush paint I'm using for the mount here and for these quote-unquote Greebelies. So they're now ready to be obviously put on the model once the paint's dried. So I think what we're going to do is leave that to dry for now and concentrate on the last little details of these buggers here. and then we'll get back onto weathering this, because obviously these I can weather with oil paints once they're attached, but this I'm going to have to weather before it's mounted onto the actual bracket itself. Didn't really want to sand this too much, because it has to have a bit of a flex to it in order for the remote to click on. So I'm not massively sanding this one, just on the off chance that there's breaks, because if that does break over time, it's going to be held in with little bolts and nylon nuts and whatever, so you can actually replace that. It's easy enough to reprint one of them if you break it and just rebolt that back on. So that's where we're at this point. Weathering these guys is to come next. Just want to remember to at least give you one tip. So when I'm weathering these little helmets here, I don't have a proper wash. And I usually make my own with just acrylic paint and water. But I'll be honest, I need this to be really, 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 really thin the way it was for the other helmet. So what I'm actually using is, again, just airbrush paint. So it's just a couple of drops of NATO black. And I thin that right down with isopropyl alcohol. Now, if you don't have isopropyl alcohol, because it is quite expensive and it's getting harder to come by, apparently, you can still thin this with water, but when you thin it down, you want it to be really, really, really thin, just so it flows into the cracks and what have you, picking up all the details, and then you can wipe off the excess. All right, so we'll do that now, and we'll see how this looks. Really, really, really runny. I'm gonna mix that in with a brush, make sure all the sediment and powder and stuff's all mixed in. But that's how you do your wash. So this is where we're at with this tiny little weathered helmet now. Again, all you're doing is you're painting this little brush, air wash all over it, and then just dabbing it off with some kitchen roll, paper towel, whatever you know, your terminology's up to you, but that's where you're looking. It's meant to kind of take some of the paint away with it to make it look like it's been there in the desert for a while. I'm really happy with the progress of this. I know he hasn't got the blue little doobies there, but if I can't get them cut out on the wife's silhouette cutter, then I'll try and paint them on, but if not, I can go without them, to be fair. It doesn't have to be full details. At the end of the day, it's been pulled off his head and smashed onto a spike. That's the idea. So anyway, I'm going to continue to do that, and then by the time I finish that, this should be dry. I'm going to get the outside of this looking a little bit more cool. So let's do that. So now that we've done the wash on the Stormtrooper helmet here, we're going to try and do something very similar with the wee man. And we're going to get some green and some isopropyl alcohol and just get it in those little wrinkles on his dome. However, the green I have isn't an airbrush paint, so it might not be as liquidy. It's this stuff, just that acrylic. So I'm going to give this a try first in here. If I can't get the consistency right, I'm just going to have to bite the bullet and go and buy some model paints. But it's kind of getting to the end of the project time frame now, and I didn't want to have to do that. So we'll give this a go and we'll see how we get on. So we're back to doing stuff now. The outside now has been painted to blend in with the look of, it's a Star Wars box. It's been hacked open. Inside you've got this little scene, and outside you've got a box in the Star Wars universe. So like anything else, it needs Greebelies. So like I said before, I'm going to use this Grapple Gun, which I've repainted, and I've also got a little pot of things. And I suggest if you're going to build Star Wars stuff, do this. Anytime you have something that you take apart or throw away, look in for little Greeblies like such. So that one doesn't count because I 3D printed that one, but it's still going on, so that's fine. Stuff like this, anything that looks relatively interesting, obviously you can always use that for something else. Just stick it on there, repaint it. Greebelies, that's the whole point in the Greebelies. So we're going to start with these, and we're just going to use hot glue to get these on the outside, and hopefully that'll then look awesome. And yeah, so let's do that. So in terms of where we are at the minute, that's the interior, and that, woo, is your exterior so far. I still need to weather this. There are some holes in that, but like I say, it doesn't really matter. It's a Greebly. It's all going to be viewed from like that kind of angle. So once that's weathered, that should look a bit more the business. So what I've done with yonder fella here is I'm just about to go and do with the pastels what I did on this helmet here. So you take your powder and you kind of draw it across. What I'm doing is I'm using this pink, and that's just to give him a little bit of his rosy cheeks and the inside of his ears as well, just to make that look a bit more wonderful. So let's do that, and then we'll stick him on, and then the last thing we have to do is this dude, and then weather the Greebelies, and that's pretty much it done. Oh no, it's not. Still need to finish that, the actual bracket up, but we're getting there with that, so that's nearly done. It's very, very close to being.
Fan Creations Prop Shop is currently experiencing some technical problems. We're sorry for any inconvenience. Please bear with us.
Apologies, but there's been some work done while you've not been here because my battery died. So, it's going to keep you up to date. I've decided with this dude, his helmet has been there for a while, to the point where it's like, this is a whole thing, yeah. So, someone will have pilfered the lenses and stuff, so I'm not actually going to put the green lenses in there. This little doobry here is now kind of leaking slimy wateriness. That's what that's meant to be. He is now painted and put into place. Greebly there. Focus. There we are. That says PlayStation 5. The mount is going to be there. That's currently painted silver and awaiting this latex to dry so I can carry on the weathering effect. This is genuinely one of the final steps now. So what I did last night before I went to bed is I painted this silver with the airbrush, which I think I showed you. I then covered it in little bits and pieces of the liquid latex, and then I painted it with a whole red. This little bugger here from Model A. So what we're going to do is I'm going to try my best to prop this up and show you how I do my weatheringness. So a lot of the times with this you can just use your finger to just pull off the latex like that, and that's normally enough to create that chipping effect. However, if you don't want to do that, you can use quite a stiff brush and just do that. It doesn't work so much on the main bits, but it's good for the edges, like so. Or your trusty kitten, and your kitten, you just taking the latex away like that. I'll be honest, in this particular instance, it's probably easier just to do it with your finger. And what that does, like I say, is that creates a chipping, weathering effect to make that look like old, nasty metal. So I'm going to continue to weather this. Then it's going to get bolted on, and then we're laughing, and we're finished. So I'm going to do that, and the next thing you see should be the finished article.
Later that very same day...
So that model's in his new home now, and I really hope he likes it. I hope you enjoyed watching this video as well. If you did, please consider giving it a like, or liking some of the other ones if you enjoyed those. And if you'd like to see more, drop a subscribe on the channel, and I'll see if I can keep them coming for you. Guys, wherever you are in the world, look after yourselves during these crazy times, look after each other, and never forget, be free and proud to live and love your fandom. Take care.